Welcome one and all to the Damage Report. I'm John Iadarola, joined and very lucky to be joined today on the show by Jessica Burbank. Jessica, how's it going?
It's a TDR Tuesday. It's going great, John.
It's a TDR Tuesday. How you doing? It's been a little bit. How's the news treating you? I know that you're doing some special events coming up in the relatively near future. How's everything going? How's the TikTok?
Well, TikTok's good. All of the other circumstances and news are even better than usual. Everything's going great in the country, I feel, and there's not much to report on or talk about. So I don't know what we're gonna have to come up with today, John.
They cured inflation, no climate issues. It's great, really.
Peace in the Middle East. It's like, what do we talk about?
Yeah, I guess we'll talk about Barbie. I'm pretty excited about that. The initial reviews are pretty positive. I think I'm gonna see it on opening day, but that's about it.
But there is you're right. I'll talk about the event. There is a hot labor summer event with Stephen Dossinger, Chris Smalls, and Marion Williamson. It will be very fun. It's in Atlanta the 22nd, and I'll be emceeing. I have to talk about the events I do. Yes, thank you.
I want to be at that. That sounds awesome. Anyway, very cool. Everyone in the area, definitely go. There is one thing in the news that I want to ask you about that maybe it's evolved on, but as of a few days ago, it had not. As of right now, I don't think you're on Threads. Are you taking a stand? What's going on with that?
I have so much fun on Twitter, John. I have been guilted into joining Threads.
You did?
Threads, but I have not been thneeding or whatever you call it.
Thneeding is definitely what it should be. We did a focus group. That's the best we came up with. We're not very creative people. Okay, interesting. So you're just saying that you are lining up on the side of Elon Musk, just to be clear.
Right, he's my guy, love him. We've always gotten along swimmingly.
Okay, it makes sense. You've always loved billionaires so much, why not?
Yes.
But anyway, okay, well, a little bit of light razzing aside, very happy to have you on. Hopefully we've got some stories you'll find interesting and some a bit controversial. We're gonna be talking about Jonah Hill to close out the show. That's gonna be awesome. Yeah. Guys are the best. I've always loved being a guy and being affiliated with other guys. They're just great, batting 1,000.
Lots of opinions. It's a hill I'm willing to die on, John.
Yeah. Okay, well, with that, I'm just gonna throw a little bit of a behind the scenes thing to my team. I don't know if it's just a thing with I see what the issue is. I have the wrong document open. Okay, well that's gonna make it more difficult. This is my work computer, but when I loaded it up, everything's out of date. That's on me, actually, everybody. But while I find the right document, I wanna thank you for being here. We do have a lot to talk about, both in the first hour as well as in the aftermath. In advance of that, though, if you would hit the like button and share the stream, that would be great. So that people join us, we can talk, and you can reach out to us with comments, super chats, tweets, all of that. Thneeds, maybe. We love a good thneed. And the Damage Report is on Threads as well as me, so definitely take a look at that. And with all that said, Jessica, you ready to talk about the news?
I'm ready to get into it, John.
Let's do it. Joe Biden and Hunter Biden have been facing a lot of allegations for the last 1,000 years, it feels like. About 1,000 years, I think. And there's definitely something to some of it. Hunter Biden is gonna be pleading guilty to multiple charges, but the accusations, of course, go far beyond what he's gonna be pleading guilty to, let alone the accusations that have been made against Joe Biden. We've actually had a few updates on these, having to do with the whistleblowers who've been unveiling what they believe is going on behind the scenes when it comes to Hunter and Joe. And so we wanna catch you up a little bit on that. So we wanna start with US Attorney David Weiss, who is overseeing the Hunter Biden criminal probe and has faced accusations that pressure was put on him to not go really hard and uncover what's really going on behind the scenes, that they sort of slow rolled this and then all went very easy in terms of the charges. Well, he says in a letter now that he did not ask to be named as a special counsel and was never refused authority to bring charges anywhere in the country. So those are two of the biggest allegations that have been made by whistleblowers. The idea that he wanted to be a special counsel and pressure was put on, I guess, the investigation to not have that happen, basically to stop it from advancing too much. And that he wanted to press charges, I think, in DC, where they could have gone harder on some of the tax stuff, but he was refused the authority to do that. So he is saying now that that is not true. I have not requested special counsel designation. Rather, I had discussions with departmental officials regarding potential appointment, which would have allowed me to file charges in a district outside my own without the partnership of the local US attorney. So he presents it not as a thing where outside pressure was put on him. Now, I do want to throw out, before we get into the discussion, the possibility that he could not be telling the truth. I've looked into it, and sometimes people in government do that. So it is not impossible that the account of the whistleblower could still be true, or that the whistleblower could just be mistaken. There's also the possibility that the whistleblower is lying about the experience that they had. I guess any one of these possibilities is out there, but Jessica, what do you make of all this?
I think there's an effort to slander the Biden family. Hunter Biden could plead guilty, and it could very well be because Hunter Biden is guilty of several things. But I think in the effort to slander the Biden family, to say that there was political interference, and then as soon as they get suspected, guilty plea, they're like, well, we got that, so let's forget about trying to force this other thing, right? It feels like a comms effort on their behalf to slander the Bidens.
Yeah, the thing about that always gets me, and I've talked about this on the show multiple times, is like the right in general, Trump specifically, the right, Republicans want to attack Joe Biden. And I have always considered Joe Biden and his administration to be eminently attackable. And yet they come to the fight with their arms tied behind their back. And they have to use hearsay and conspiracy allegations because they are not freed up to attack him on the substantive shortcomings of his administration, the things that he's promised that he hasn't made good on, because they don't want those things to happen either. It would be a great attack. There are incredibly popular things that people want Biden to do. There are incredibly popular things that he said that he would do that he has not gotten done for a variety of different reasons. But they don't want those popular things to get done either. So I guess Ukraine something $5 million. It makes our politics so irrational, so disconnected from the experience of regular people, because they, in a lot of ways serve the same, what Nina Turner calls owner donors of our economy.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything new, and I've said this for quite some time, that you have people that are very high up in public office in the United States that are close to business dealings with multinational corporations in other states. And those business dealings to accumulate wealth aren't always things that happen because of political purposes. There's a lot of tax evasion, there's a lot of secret accounts. When you're that wealthy and you're that powerful in the United States, it happens across party lines. And to make it seem like it's just the Biden family and it's just Democrats because they're so corrupt is completely absurd. And so the way that they've pursued this on political grounds to make it seem like it's exclusively the Bidens, it's exclusively the elite liberals, is ridiculous. You should be upset that all parties do this, and the elite does this in the country.
Yeah, 100%. Look, that said, I want to catch people up on some of the other developments, especially because maybe this is just me. Maybe I'm unveiling, my mental shortcomings. I have found a lot of this story very difficult to follow because so much of it rests on innuendo and references to documents that we can't see and conversations that we can't confirm and all that. It makes it more difficult for like a regular person who's just doing their best to follow what elites are doing to follow, but I'm trying. Anyway, Weiss apparently said that he got the assurances that we talked about previously in the months before the October 7th meeting reference throughout the whistleblower's allegations. So the whistleblower either wasn't aware of that or is misconstruing what happened or misinforming about what happened. The prosecutor wrote that he has never been denied the authority to bring charges in any jurisdiction. So anyway, so the actual person that we're talking about here, Gary Shapley, the whistleblower, has responded to this already, says that the letter shows that Weiss's story continues to change. But does it? I hadn't heard anything from Weiss previously, and this seems consistent with how it's been described in the past. Like it refutes what you're saying, and as I've already said, it could be wrong. He could be wrong, he could be lying, he could be facing political pressure to make the claims that he's making in that letter. But that doesn't mean that his story is changing. Anyway, lawyers for Shapley say as a practical matter, it makes no difference whether Weiss requested special counsel or special attorney authority. Under no circumstances should the process have included the political appointees of the subject's father, because Congress and the public have been assured it would not, but it did. So that is a change to the story. You had previously said he wanted to be special counsel, he was denied it. That is proof of a very specific effective pressure. You want this thing, that thing threatens us, we're not letting you have that thing. And now when they say we never requested that thing, you're saying, well, that thing never mattered. Just 5 minutes ago, you were saying that it was like proof of corruption, proof of political influence. That would be damning if it turned out that that was true, and it's still not impossible that it is, but you don't have evidence for it. And look, if you have as a general thing, you don't think that anything should be happening that could theoretically go easy on the elites or whatever, then I am like way ahead of you, buddy. The difference is that I would not just apply this to investigations into Hunter Biden or Joe Biden. I would apply it to all of these rich MFers who have connections and influence and power and hold elected office. I would apply the same sort of standards to the Supreme Court. That is not what the right is actually calling for. They want special scrutiny on the Bidens because they oppose them politically, and that is exactly where they would draw the line. They don't want you looking into what Jared Kushner or Ivanka were doing when they were in office. They don't want you to looking into the special deals and acting as foreign agents of so many in the Trump circle. They're not actually taking issue with elites personally profiting or as proxies for corporations or other wealthy interests profiting off of their positions. They just don't like the idea that Hunter Biden might have done it, and that still hasn't even been established. Any other thoughts, Jessica?
Just it's very politically convenient for them, for Hunter Biden to have done this. Why are they not investigating Jared Kushner and the Saudis? Why was that not a priority of Chuck Grassley and Comer? And so it makes it very clear that this is something that's political. It doesn't help for us to follow this, like you said, as just citizens wanting to follow what's going on in the country. When they decide, all right, this is gonna be a closed committee, we're not gonna reveal any of the documents that we're reviewing, but we're gonna let Chuck Grassley go on primetime television and tell us, we probably have evidence of this, using not absolute terms, very clear the documents aren't evidencing what they're alleging, because he's not using absolute language. He's saying we probably have evidence on this. You should not speak out as a member of the House Oversight Committee on this. And so this should have been the type of investigation that went similarly to the Iran-Contra scandal, where you should disclose to the public everything that you've uncovered if you really want to be a democratic society and serve the people and make this information available. But it seems to me that a lot of their investigation was just done for political purposes and not to establish a precedent so things like this don't happen again.
100%. And he could do what he did, making vague assertions, because he knows that for the people who are hearing that message, who the message is targeted to, that is as good as actual evidence. There's another issue that we need to talk about. One of the whistleblowers who's been revealing what they supposedly know about the Bidens, in this case about Hunter Biden having connections to China. Okay, he has now been charged with a number of different things. Let's see, arms trafficking, acting as a foreign agent for China, violating sanctions on Iran. That's fun. This is Gal Luft, arrested in Cyprus in February on US charges, but fled after being released on bail while awaiting extradition, is not currently in US custody. So this is one of the special whistleblowers that you might have heard, again, vague references to by Republicans for a number of months. Here's an example, House Representative James Comer. Here's him talking about Luft literally just last week.
Tell us about this man. The Post describes him as well-connected in intelligence circles in Washington, D.C., where he ran a think tank, the Institute for the Analysis of Global Security, with former CIA Director James Woolsey and former National Security Advisor Robert McFarlane as advisors. That's who this man is. He's not just some weird guy that popped up out of nowhere.
No, he's very credible, and the people on MSNBC who made fun of me when I said we had an informant that was missing, they should feel like fools right now.
They are fools.
And this is their worst nightmare because, again, this is a credible witness that the FBI flew all the way to Brussels to interview and sent several agents to interview. This is someone that knew about CEFC in detail long before the laptop ever became public. So we feel that this is a very credible witness.
Oh, thank God. I thought we were going way too far into this story without having references to the laptop. But anyway, he said there that Luft is a credible witness. I think he meant an incredible witness, because it is fairly incredible to lead this sort of James Bondian life that he apparently has led, acting as a foreign agent for multiple countries, helping facilitate arms deals, going on the lam in Cyprus. That's incredible. I think that we can all agree on that. And I want to be clear that, I don't know if these charges are true. I know that the right is saying, and we're gonna get to some of what they're saying about this being a witch hunt, because anything against them is, you can act as a foreign agent, you can facilitate arms trades, you can flee the authorities, and be right about the thing that you're whistleblowing about. That is entirely true. But to act as if it's not concerning that he'd been doing all this stuff. And let me just run you really quickly through some of what we've learned over the past 2 days. Accused of, so a citizen of both the US and Israel, accused of paying a former advisor to Donald Trump on behalf of principals in China back in 2016 without registering as a foreign agent. Generally, the right seems to have an issue with stuff having to do with the Chinese government. For some reason, it doesn't bother them here. Prosecutors say that Mr. Luft pushed the former government employee, who was not named, to push policies that were favorable to China. This, from the point of view of a MAGA person, seems like it'd be the ultimate betrayal, but again, they don't care. Also alleged that he set up meetings between officials of Iran and a Chinese energy company to discuss oil deals, which would violate US sanctions. Also alleged that Mr. Luft conspired with others and attempted to broker illicit arms transactions with, among others, certain Chinese individuals and entities by working as a middleman to find both buyers and sellers for certain weapons and other materials in violation of the US Arms Control Act. So if the allegations are true, literally working to advance the economic, energy, and military interests of China and or Iran government and individuals, but they don't care about literally any of this. Again, it doesn't mean that he's not right about the stuff that he's whistleblowing about. Maybe it actually lends credence to it, Jessica, because if the whole thing is that he has information about government officials personally profiting from foreign governments, he at least can now say that he has like subject expertise. He has lived experience when it comes to this sort of thing. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Luft believing that he can't get a fair trial in New York is shocking. Like, to me, fair means even-handed, but I think to a lot of these guys, fair means heavy-handed in the direction that favors me. Like, you're a white, pretty wealthy man. Who does our justice system work for if not for you? And these are the same guys that'll be like, our world isn't fair, life isn't fair. We've worked very hard to tip the scales in our direction and develop systems that maintain those scales to be tipped in our direction. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah, look, the life is not fair. I think we can all attest to that. I think everybody, Jessica, me, you, but I think it generally tries to go above and beyond to be fair to people like Luft. Look at the opportunities he's had in his life to set up these sorts of deals. Again, incredible. Anyway, I want to get to just a little bit of the video of Luft, so let's jump to that.
Let it sink in. I, who volunteered to inform the US government about potential security breach and about compromising information about a man vying to be the next president, am now being hunted by the very same people whom I informed and may have to live on the run for the rest of my life. I warned the government about potential risk to the integrity of the 2020 elections. If convicted by a US court, would never be able to vote again in the US elections. Just think about it and ask yourself, who's the real criminal in this story?
I mean, based on the allegations, it seems like you. I mean, you did flee the authorities. Now, again, look, there have been people who have blown the whistle on the US government, on individuals in the US government, and have been relentlessly hunted across the face of the earth for years, probably for the rest of their life. That is not a thing that's unprecedented. That is not a thing that is impossible to conceive could happen again. But let's also consider the possibility that someone who has personally profited by breaking the law for literally years and is now trying to once again insinuate himself in American politics by claiming that he has information that perhaps he does not have, is using the fact that there have been these historic injustices against actual whistleblowers to defend himself in a Trumpian sort of way, implying that any accountability for anything that was done is obviously on its face illegitimate. I'm just saying that that is also a possibility. I don't have any special information when it comes to this. I don't know if Luft is like the best guy in the world or the criminal that he's being pitched to be. I'm just saying that just the fact that the Biden administration has put some charges on him does not mean that it's automatically illegitimate. Final thoughts, go to you, Jessica.
I think, the United States, our people love a criminal with a victim complex. It's just something we have in us. We love it, we eat it up. That impassioned speech about how I could be hunted for the rest of my life. The tough on crime Republicans, that's exactly what they want. Criminals in the United States to feel like even when they haven't been convicted of a crime, they believe just being accused of a crime or not listening to everything a cop tells you to do in a stop and frisk makes you someone worthy of sometimes execution at worst, but at best being arrested by the police. And we really view things in a black and white way. And when he says, who's the criminal in this situation? It can be many people, my guy. It doesn't just have to be you're a good guy and someone else is a bad guy. We love that too.
Yeah, 100%. Maybe all of you are criminals. And honestly, to go back to something that I said earlier, maybe Joe Biden and Hunter are criminals, but not for the absurd things that you're saying. Maybe they have benefited financially. Like, have you ever heard of campaign finance? Book deals, speaking tours. You guys love elites getting paid for their influence. You think you found one way that we can criticize that's outside of the bounds of what we personally want to do? But anyway, I don't know if you did these deals, but you don't strike me as Assange. You don't strike me as Manning. Like again, this is like George Santos saying that he's basically Rosa Parks. Maybe you're not. Have you considered that? Anyway, with that said, we're gonna jump to our first break. There's lots more news to get to. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Okay, everybody, I believe I am now prepared to do the news with the right tabs. So with that, let's do it. I wanna talk to you about a headline that I saw about climate change, about heat specifically. It's the number of people who were killed over the last summer in Europe by extreme heat events. And I am going to tell you, before I tell you how many it is, that you cannot guess how many it is. And I will furthermore tell you that even after I say that, and you adapt what you think, your prediction based on that warning and that stipulation, you're still wrong. Over 61,000 people died from searing summer temperatures across Europe last year. That's according to a study published in the journal Nature Medicine. 61,000 people is a pretty nice sized stadium. That's like a good audience for a Taylor Swift show. 61,000 people perishing because where they lived was inhabitable. And we made that. We made that situation on Earth. A situation where in one area of the world, in one summer, tens of thousands of people would die. And here is something I think that makes that even scarier, if that's possible. 2 decades ago, there was an extreme summer of heat in Europe, and 71,000 people died then. And you know what they did in the 2 decades between then and now? Across Europe, they put into place contingency plans and prepared for another heat wave like that. More people had access to places they could go to, AC in their homes, all of these different plans across many different countries. And after 2 decades of that, nearly as many people still died. So even with all the technological progress, the academic research, the organization, we can barely keep pace with what we're doing to the climate. And this is an issue outside of Europe, obviously. People are dying all over the world. We've talked about some of the droughts and the famine in Africa. We've obviously been talking about the heat dome here in the US, and we will do more of that in a bit. But I want you to bear in mind, temperatures across Europe are increasing twice as fast as temperatures in other parts of the globe. So it is bad everywhere, but it's getting far worse, far faster in Europe, and it is killing so many people. I'm gonna throw just one more fact out there from the study before we discuss. In this study, they discovered that a person's risk of dying from elevated temperatures steeply increased with age. You're perhaps not surprised by that. But women, particularly those over the age of 80, were more likely to die than men, though men were more likely to die in younger age groups. And so something to bear in mind, this is true not just in Europe, you can see this in the United States as well. Jessica, what do you make of this?
Yeah, it's almost like it's worse in Europe because Mother Earth knows who to blame for the consequences of industrialization. No, the people that are alive living in Europe now obviously weren't the people who decided to industrialize and rely on fossil fuels. And even the people who did weren't fully aware of their consequences. We learned that shortly after, but it's important we know it's shortly after because we've been playing this big trolley problem for so long of are we okay with some people dying for us to continue to profit and burn fossil fuels? That's the simple calculation they've made. And they've decided, yes, we'd rather be really rich and just let people die. And there are still a lot of people that are making that same excuse by just saying, the planet's gone through periods of heating and cooling and we'll just adapt. We'll figure it out. We'll adapt. We really won't. We're just okay, some of us, with human lives being expendable. And I think that's a consequence of us not having strong communities. It seems like just a number. It's people we don't know or will never meet who will die until flooding comes to our town, climate disasters come to our town. Then it is people we know. And then maybe we'll feel more strongly about it. But I think until then, there's so many people who aren't paying as close attention to the issue as I think you and I are, John.
100%, yeah. The idea that we'll adapt. So first of all, follow-up question, who's we? Which we's will be able to adapt? Which we's will have the resources? Which we's will have the infrastructure support? And all of that. Which we's? Maybe some we's. There's some we's that are perfectly happy, prepared to build massive chrome-plated arcologies where a couple thousand of the richest people in the country can go and vault themselves off as we, the sun-stricken mutants, scrounge around in what's left of our civilization. Yeah, maybe some we's will be okay. They're doing some of that big building in Saudi Arabia now, actually, as we speak. But for a lot of us, no, we're not going to adapt to this sort of thing. The earth has limits and humans definitely have limits, okay? There are conditions that we cannot sustain and we are seeing them across wide areas of the world. Like, take a look at the Arctic, take a look at the unnatural ice melt that we've seen, the lack of ice cover in the Arctic that is true right now if you were to go there. Globally, there have been 4 straight days of temperature records set or tied since just July 3rd. That was 8 days ago. 4 straight records being set, along with 7 straight days of average temperatures breaching 62.6 degrees Fahrenheit. That previously had not occurred since at least 1940. Again, that is the global average temperature. That by itself might not seem terrible, but that is the average temperature, including all of the areas that are supposed to be far colder. So bear that in mind. And then you go to like specific places and you see how bad it's getting. In Arizona, the NWS warns that residents of Phoenix be prepared for temperatures into the 110 degrees Fahrenheit for this week and into the next, with the city's milestone for the most consecutive 110 degrees days likely to fall. The current record stands at 18 days. They think they're going to break maybe 3 weeks of higher than 110 degrees Fahrenheit. How are they going to adapt to that? I'm not talking about in 10 years or in 50 years, like now. Like the rest of this week, how are they going to adapt? The people who don't have air conditioning, that don't have family members to help them, the elderly, the unhoused. How exactly are they going to adapt to this? That's a question that rhetorically I'm asking it to you, but obviously it's not intended to go to you. It's intended to go towards the people in power, both in government and in industry, who, to return to Jessica's point, are 100% okay with people dying to maintain the status quo and to maintain steady growth of corporate profits. I don't care if they ever go on camera and say, yes, I'm fine with people dying in Ethiopia if that's what it takes. They are proving with their action and their inaction both that they're okay with that.
Yeah, it's a situation where the people who don't rely on insurance to prevent flooding and disasters to cover the cost when those things happen to them, they have so much money that is not a problem. It's the people who can buy food elsewhere when farms flood and they don't have a season of produce to bring to market and make their money off of, and they're living season to season, and now they're bankrupt and they have to move somewhere else and they don't have anywhere else to move, so they live on flooded farmland. There are people who never have to make the calculations everyday people have to make. And those are the people running our economy, the people with so much money that they're entirely insulated from these issues and can move if it becomes a problem where they do live. And so what are the rest of us going to do? We're just going to have to move around and struggle and be the ones who have to die as a consequence of this. And there are going to be people that are going to continue keeping cool by running their AC on full blast. And what is required to have the AC running? We're gonna have to burn fossil fuels. We're gonna have to get energy from somewhere. And they're so fine with not transitioning because it will never affect them. Those are the people driving the bus that we're all on, and they're gonna jump out before it crashes.
Can we at least like ramp up solar and wind for the inevitable, 250 days of necessary AC that we're cruising towards? That would be nice. Right now, people in the Northeast don't need to be told that there is absolutely like apocalyptic flooding going on right now. Vermont's capital has been absolutely swamped. I believe we have a little bit of video footage that we can show. But residents were being evacuated where they could. Other residents, including in the capital, were told it's too late. We can't evacuate. We think that a dam is about to break, but there's nothing we can do about it. So go higher, like go to the second floor, the third floor. First of all, I don't think that you need to tell people that. Second of all, not everyone can do that. Third of all, Jesus, it's America. How is this the last resort that we have for people? Like, hey, if you don't want to drown, maybe go higher. We'll see what happens. Look, the authorities were trying to rescue people with both helicopters and boats. A woman has already died in New York. It is terrible though. 20.89 feet on Tuesday morning. Feet. That's second only to a higher record that was reached in 1927. So damn near a century. You have to go back to find flooding that was worse, and that is ongoing. So look, we're ruining the environment when it comes to heat. We're causing flooding when it happens to be worse, mudslides to be worse when they happen, hurricanes to be worse when they happen, monsoons to be worse when they happen. We're turning up all the dials on Mother Earth simultaneously because we think that's what's necessary so that stock go up. And it's terrible. And by the way, really fast, not that this is necessarily where like the most empathy should necessarily go, but I care about people whose property is destroyed as well. In Southern California, hilltop homes, like a dozen homes, each worth more than $1 million, sunk into a canyon in Palos Verdes Peninsula. There was a very short period of warning given for people to evacuate before the earth swallowed up a rich community. And so, look, maybe even that arcology eventually will fall with the damage that we're doing through worsening storms. Jessica, what do you think?
I think the way our economy has been set up, you pointing out the Wall Street thing, stocks going up and that being more important. The incentive structure that we have is we've outsourced money creation to private banks. We've outsourced the job of deciding what businesses get to grow to people on Wall Street who are bankers. Both entities have one incentive, and it's to have a high return on their investment, whatever makes the most money. Our market is not driven by what do the people living within the economy want and need. We do have a planned economy, and it's planned by Wall Street and private bankers. They decide what to invest in. They're not incentivized to invest in renewable energy. The way the economy has been set up needs to change. We need to have the public sector say, okay, if the market is failing to address this and make this transition, we have the power of the purse. We can put public dollars towards this. We don't need to have private bankers be the ones running our economic system for everyone against literally everyone's interests.
Yeah, because its fundamental interests are not ours. It's not people. It barely cares about people, except insofar as it can maximize profit. Like capitalism can build a railroad, but we can't guarantee that the tracks don't go right off a cliff. Like because there's no morality baked into it. That's not how it works. And even worse, when most of us aren't the ones who are benefiting along the way. We're being left behind as it happens, and then being thrown off a cliff at the end of it. Okay, and if the rich think that like there's no reckoning coming, do they think that everyone is just going to just lay down in the desert that has become America, just recede peacefully below the levels of the rising ocean? Do they think as people get desperate and have nothing, no resources, that they will never look to those that threw them over the cliff? It seems self-destructive. I guess they're relying on personal militaries. I don't know.
I've heard they're actually scared, John. I've heard they've considered making bunkers and things of that nature.
Okay. We'll see. I'm sure they'll be very nicely designed bunkers. In the meantime, for those people whose areas will no longer sustain agriculture or are below 20 feet of water, I don't necessarily have advice for you. At times like this, I turn to my intellectual betters, like intellectual gladiators like Ben Shapiro, and I'll just say, just sell your property to someone else and then move to a different place. Sell the property that you own in an uninhabitable location to other people for great profit, and then move to a place that still will sustain American or human life. Anyway, with that said, kind of going over, it's my fault. I care about the environment. We're gonna turn now to a very different topic, starting with this.
But just to be clear, you agree that white nationalists should not be serving in the US military. Is that what you're saying?
If people think that a white nationalist is a racist, I agree with that. I agree they should.
A white nationalist is someone who believes that the white race is superior to other races.
Well, that's some people's opinion. And I don't think,
That's
I mean,
not opinion.
Pardon?
What's your opinion?
My opinion of a white nationalist, if somebody wants to call him white nationalist, to me is an American. It's an American. Now, if that white nationalist is a racist, I'm totally against anything that they want to do because I am 110% against racism.
It's a bold stance. I'm okay with the KKK, but if a KKK member is also a racist, then I'm against him. Bold stance, Senator. I love his point. Is like, she says it means that they're racist. It means that they think that they're better than non-white people. And he says that's some people's opinion. Yeah, the white nationalists' opinion. That's what makes them white nationalists. He's a senator, and I am not going to pretend, as some people in the media might, that senators generally are particularly intelligent people. I'm not going to pretend that they're better than you or I. We were supposed to believe that. We were led to believe that, raised on that sort of thing, but it's been pretty proven to be not true. That said, even with the low bar that I think most people still have for members of the Senate, this is a particularly awful, racist, stupid person. He did have more to say about it, though. Take a look at this.
But that's not identity politics. You said a white nationalist is an American.
It is identity politics.
You said a white nationalist is an American, but a white nationalist is someone who believes horrific things. Do you really think that's someone who should be serving in the military?
Well, that's just a name that has been given. I mean,
it's not. It's a real definition. There's real concerns about
extremism. So if you're going to do away with most white people in this country out of the military, we got huge problems.
It's not.
Huge problems.
It's not people who are white. It's white nationalists
that have a few probably different beliefs.
Right?
That have different beliefs. Now, if racism is one of those beliefs, I'm totally against it. I am totally against racism.
But
there's a lot of people that believe in different things.
Is racist, Senator?
Well, that's your opinion.
Okay, so again, it's him really revealing something when she points out that like maybe people who don't believe that by virtue of the race they were born into, they are superior in all ways to other people. Maybe they shouldn't serve in the military. And he says, well, what are we gonna do? Get rid of all white people? No, because I don't believe that every white person is a white nationalist, but you are sending strong signals that you believe that, sir. And super apologetic towards people for small differences of opinion. I don't personally believe that thinking you're superior to everyone else is a small thing. I feel like it's pretty foundational, pretty core and concerning, especially when you're talking about people who are literally being trained to fight, getting access to weapons, maybe being involved with our nukes. Maybe that's not the safest thing in the world, Jessica, but what do you think?
I think it's possible he thought that it was just a nationalist who happened to be white and that's what they were talking about. No, I think it's pretty clear that he knew exactly what he meant by white nationalists, that the country should be run by and for people who are white, presumably men as well, knowing Senator Tuberville. But there's a brand of racism where they don't believe they're being racist because they don't think it's racist if you just think, yes, they're also humans and they have a right to exist. But to have this kind of hierarchical structure where white people are at the top, they're fine with that. They think racism is only when you take away people's rights or see them as less than human because of their race. There's definitely a spectrum of racism where some things are worse than others to treat other people in that way. It is still racist to believe that only white people should be running the country. It's not just that you see them also as human beings.
100%, yes. And look, we have to decide where on that spectrum he goes based on what we saw in that video. But I am going to stack the deck just a little bit. I'm gonna play a bit of video for you. This is from last October. This is the senator talking about crime. And I want you to listen to this and see what you think he actually thinks about race.
They're pro-crime. They want crime. They want crime because they want to take over what you got. They want to control what you have. They want reparation because they think the people that do the crime are owed that. They are not owed that.
They want reparations because the people who do crime are owed that. Do I need to connect the dots? I feel like they're bumping shoulders at this point. I don't think that's complicated to figure out. Jesus. Anyway, that's a guy who's a senator. That's a guy with power and influence. As a final, before we move on, he's using that influence right now. He's blocking the appointment of a new head of the Marine Corps. It has been 164 years since the Marine Corps went without a leader. And thanks to that guy, who has big thoughts about the military and race, doesn't think that they need one. So that's fun. It's great to have a Senate. It's great to have the best deliberative body in the history of the world. Anyway, with that said, we do need to take our last break. Lots more to get to on the other side of this break. We'll see you in a few. We are still months out until the first Republican presidential nominating contest in Iowa. It's January 15th, but the drums are already reaching a boiling point. You see, Kim Reynolds is the new governor of Iowa, a Republican, and she has made clear that she doesn't want to weigh in on the contest between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis and a whole bunch of nobodies or whatever. And that is not going to be accepted well by Donald Trump. He posted on Truth Social, "I love Iowa, protected and expanded ethanol. Got $28 billion from China for our great farmers." That's not how the tariffs work. Let's just be very clear. That's not how they work literally at all. Ended the estate death tax on farms, made the best trade deals in history, blah, 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 blah. I opened up the governor position for Kim Reynolds, and when she fell behind, I endorsed her, did big capital R rallies, and she won. Now she wants to remain neutral. I don't invite her to events. DeSantis down 45 points. So that, I'm gonna say, little boy who's running for president, not happy with Kim Reynolds. All she said, by the way, in defense of her, and it'll be literally the only time on the show that I ever defend her, "I want to welcome everyone to this state, and if I weigh in, I don't know if they'll feel all that welcome. But I've made it clear, and I will be happy to help introduce you, help travel the state, connect in any way that I can, especially to make sure that if we've got big things going on, that they know about it." A Reynolds spokesperson has not responded to requests for comment on what Trump has said. Ron DeSantis is trying to be a little bit more diplomatic, saying that she's a strong leader who knows how to ignore the chirping and get it done. She earned a landslide re-election because she delivered big results. She's poised to deliver even more for Iowans in the special session. Reporting now live, I believe, from Iowa, Jessica Burbank. What do you make of the drums?
Oh my God, it's the same from Trump as usual, right? If it's not just extremely overwhelming support for someone, if they're not enthusiastically in love with Donald Trump almost as much as he is with himself, then it's an insult, right? He expects his feet to be kissed by people like Kim Reynolds. And when it comes to stuff like this, he doesn't care. He'll flame them, he'll burn that bridge. This is what demagogues do. And DeSantis, he takes the approach of, I'm gonna be nice to Kim Reynolds, because guess what? I have to go to her state, and she was elected in her state by the same people I hope to elect me. It's a very simple, logical, rational calculation. You don't have to be an extremely kind or strategic individual to come up with that. It's just really rich.
I agree with you. It's also interesting. I was talking about this in the production meeting. So Trump punches her in the face. Ron DeSantis is like, she's a strong leader and I like her. But I think it's a pretty open question as to which of those persuasion strategies is gonna work. He's hitting her as a threat. He's hitting her, implying that future hits could come. That maybe he doesn't endorse her the next time. Maybe he endorses someone in a primary battle against her. You would think as a human, you'd want to go with Ron DeSantis, the guy who's not punching you actively. And yet, I don't know, she could end up going with Trump at this point.
Yeah, I think Kim Reynolds is someone with a lot of political ambitions. She's someone who's really taken to the culture war fight and gained popularity from that. And she might see aligning herself with Donald Trump as something strategic for the future over Ron DeSantis. And she's probably just still sussing that out. I don't think she means a word of what she said about wanting the candidates to feel welcome and the people of Iowa to make their own decision. Absolutely not. That's not Kim.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Okay, I want to turn to another thing going on in Iowa, actually. So we're going to stick on this block for the remainder of the hour, just behind the scenes. But I want to jump into this. I've been warning people that however dirty and disgusting and underhanded and cruel and damaging you think the Republican primary is going to get, you haven't seen anything yet, and you don't understand it. We're not there yet necessarily. I think that they will go far beyond what we're seeing, but I want to give you an example of how disgusting this is going to get. There are these flyers going around like thanking Trump in Iowa for his advocacy for the LGBTQ community. And I think we all understand what the Republicans who are running these are trying to accomplish. Here's what they're sending out. Donald Trump stood up for marriage equality and trans rights. Contact President Trump and tell him to keep fighting for LGBTQ plus rights. They put the rainbow colors and there's a rainbow fist. He's a great warrior for these communities. Obviously, that's not true. We know that he's made claims that he was going to be before his term, but no, he viciously persecuted LGBTQ plus people. They know that, but they also know what their base is. It goes on to say, thank you, Trump. It shows a picture of him. He celebrated gay marriage victory at Mar-a-Lago party with log cabin Republicans. You know the log cabin Republicans. They're gay Republicans that at one point were accepted in the Republican Party, but now simply affiliating with them should end your career, I guess. And it thanks him for, goes on to say, they thank him for being a transgender trailblazer. This is an organization called Paid For so it's Advancing Our Values. It was set up on June 27th, 2023. We may never know where the money is coming from, but we understand the strategy. It's like simply having said something that's minimally supportive of trans people's right to exist is now being used as an attack against him in this underhanded way. Jessica, what do you think? Do you see this playing in Iowa?
I really do, unfortunately. The way I see it is Iowa used to be such a purple state, such a swing state. And then we saw over the period of like a half a century, businesses in Iowa be the victims of corporate farming coming in and buying up hog lots, buying up farmland, really forcing bankruptcy by having these farmers rent out the hogs or rent out tools and equipment or rent out fields and try and make it season to season. And then all of these small farms end up shutting down. There's not a lot of business there. A lot of kids don't stay after they finish school and they go and move to another state where there's more opportunity. And you have all of these folks who were totally on board with things like NAFTA and the Farm Bill. And then they see what it does to their state. They see politicians not doing much about corporate farming, taking over the ag industry, which is huge in Iowa. And then they blame wokeness being a priority as the problem, because that's convenient for these politicians to get elected instead of using things like federal funds that are available in Iowa, instead of investing in Iowa, instead of regulating these corporations, because it's easier for them to stay in power. They want to fight this culture war. And the consequence is now things like a mailer that Trump supporting the LGBTQ community could mean DeSantis has the upper hand in a state like Iowa. It's really sad to see. And it's something that's reversible, but not something a lot of people are working on here because they don't have to.
Yeah. Look, we're gonna see, we already know, and we only have a little bit of time left, unfortunately, but this is obviously following up the Ron DeSantis PAC supported absolutely vicious genocidal ad against the LGBTQ community, just delighting in the fact that he's terrifying people, that they fear for their lives, they fear for their futures. That's what he's staking this race on. And it's like kind of, I think, a natural like final destination for this horrifically cruel culture war that he's been one of the main warriors in for a number of years. He has to out Trump. And cruelty has always been one of the biggest appeals of Trump. There's the weird humor and stuff like that too, and they like some of the policies or whatever, but it's always been fundamentally built around cruelty. And I don't see this working for Ron DeSantis in terms of surpassing Trump. What I unfortunately see happening is if Trump sees it working, Trump is going to increase the cruelty. He's already shown a willingness to do this. He's been talking more about the trans community this year. I just see it getting worse and worse. But final quick point goes to you.
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you described, where DeSantis saw an opportunity here in the political field to be to the right of Donald Trump and occupy that space and criticize him from the right. And Donald Trump said, okay, well, the only thing I can do is one up people. And that means moving not to the more moral side and criticizing Ron DeSantis and keeping his position as someone who supported the LGBTQ community during his run in 2016 and a bit in 2020. Instead, he's going to the right of DeSantis, and that's really worst case scenario, and it's what we're seeing in the Republican primary. And I don't think any of these candidates care about Iowa. When Pence was asked if he's running for president, he said, well, I'm in Iowa, not because he wanted to be, not because he cared, but because he has to be.
100%. That's true of a lot of politicians, including on the Democratic side. Okay, with that said, we do have to end this first hour. Thank you everyone watching on linear platforms, listening on the podcast. Appreciate you supporting us. For the rest of you, we have more show to come in the aftermath. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Iadarola. I'll see you soon.